Yes, sir.
So as we read those questions, you'll be able to see them. And we'll be taking some notes. So we won't be making eye contact at all times, but please bear with us, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. So I guess I'll get started with my introduction. First of all, thank you for having me. Thank you for spending your time here in the interest of students of Natchitoches Parish. I want to start off by telling you my name's Granny Eloi. I am married to Lauren Eloi, my lovely wife for 10 years. We have 3 children, Ella, Percy, and Charlotte. And my education started at the Louisiana State University in Baton Rouge, where I majored in education, and then I went and got my master's here locally in NSU, and I'm currently working on my doctorate at UL Lafayette, and I should graduate, fingers crossed, this summer. As far as my experience goes, I started my career at Pineville High School under Dr. Carl Carpenter, and I was a teacher there for 6 years. I taught all the social studies curriculum, dual enrollment, world history, etc., and those were dual enrollment classes with NSU. And then I moved into the assistant principalship at Pineville High School. When I entered into the assistant principalship at Pineville High School, we were a C letter grade, and I immediately got to work on improving that. We started a social media campaign that we entitled PHS B100. We got community involved, parents involved, students involved. My students at the time, who are now in college or even graduated from college, could tell you how SPS was calculated. They knew it like that because of our campaign. But besides that, teaching and learning improved at Pineville High School. And within 2 years of that time, we went from a C to an A and increased our SPS by 17.8 points. I then moved on to the special school district, which is very special. It's very unique, very interesting. We have 20 schools in our district. We serve the Louisiana Special Education Center, as well as the School for the Deaf and the School for the Blind or visually impaired. And we also have programs throughout the state that serve students who are incarcerated, students who are in mental health facilities, basically providing education for those students who are in state custody. I currently operate 5 of those schools. Pinecrest Supports and Services Center, which I'm most proud of. That is a school that is 100% special ed, 80% of which is Leap Connect students. So they're our most severe students. And I took that school when I went there. It was at a 26 SPS, that is. And we took that with 100% sped population. Also, note the fact that they are individuals who were enrolled at Pinecrest 24/7. We increased it 98% on SPS and took it out of F status to a D status. It's just something that I give all the credit to my teachers and staff because we created a vision and we went with it and it worked. And I'm still there today. I also operate Renaissance Home for Youth, which is a independent organization from OJJ, but it operates along with them. And we have increased during my time there the high set graduation rate by 700%. And that is the only way we graduate students because they are there for only a short period of time. I also operate the Louisiana Special Ed Center. I was asked by the state to come in and run that center because of my work with Pinecrest during their transition from DOE to LDH. We have successfully navigated that transition, and I'm happy to say that we are operating smoothly today. We specifically serve students who have severe orthopedic and cognitive impairments. I provide the special education services, or my teachers do, at the Acadiana Center for Youth, and I was integral in the opening of the SPED department at Acadiana Center for Youth, and that is an OJJ facility located in Bunkie, Louisiana. I also have students at Central State Hospital in Alexandria, Louisiana. These are students who are not cognitively impaired, but have a psychiatric diagnosis. And I also have, in the past, had students at Gateway Drug Rehabilitation Center. So what I want you to know about me is I have a wide variety of experiences. From Pineville High School, very typical American high school, similar to Natchitoches Central, which we used to play all the time. And I got that experience dealing with community, dealing with parents. And then I went to something that just knocked me on my pants with special school district, because I thought I knew everything as a young administrator. And I found out within the first day I knew nothing. In the past 5 years, since 2015, has been a maturation process that has led me to believe that if I can lead in a special school district and I can have success in the special school district, that the concerns of any parish, no matter how large or small they are, I can lead them to greatness. I thoroughly believe that. It's not arrogance, it's a belief in myself, and it's a belief in the teachers that I lead, that we can do great things for kids. And that's because I believe wholeheartedly in equity. Equity for students, no matter what their neighborhood is, what their skin color is, what their exceptionality is. All students can learn if given the chance, if given the tools to do so. And we proved that at Pinecrest, we proved that at Renaissance. I've dealt with students who have committed horrific crimes, who've done any number of horrible things, or were born with a deficiency that they have no power over. And we've never reduced our expectations for those students. And because of that, we've seen success. And that's the type of leader I am. I'm a servant leader. I was a student of the Wellmans here at Northwestern State, and they taught me about servant leadership. I also believe in shared leadership, and that's how I run my operation currently. And that's how I believe all schools should be run, with shared opportunities for all people at the table. And the first shall be last. The leader should be a servant and serve all stakeholders, again, no matter their background, with equity and confidence.
Okay. Thank you for that lead-in, sir. We're going to break straight into the questions.
Okay, first of all, thank you for your application. My question is, what is the biggest barrier in education today, and how would you work to foster students successfully in spite of the barriers?
Well, thank you, Mr. Garner. I think I kind of touched on that, but I think besides, my biggest answer to that would be equity, as I said, but I also think it's contextual to every school. You know, we can say that equity is an issue nationwide, statewide, but is it the issue at Natchitoches Central, Lakeview, Goldana? Is it the issue there? And really, so I am interested in the biggest barriers, you know, just as a kind of an academic pursuit. You know, the achievement gap, equity, et cetera, and those are important big issues. But what I'm really concerned about is what are the issues of Natchitoches Parish. And to be honest with you, I can look at all the data on the spreadsheet. I can read all, and trust me, I have. I've looked at every website that has any information about you. But there's more to it than that. It's talking with, you find people, it's talking with parents and saying, what really is it? What is that barrier for Natchitoches? Because I can look at a spreadsheet and I can say, well, only 30% of students in the elementaries here are achieving mastery or above, and it's even less when we go into subgroups, and 35% on EOC, and the ACT is at 16.3. All those are symptomatic of something else. So we really have to find out what that is, and it might be equity, and I do believe, because my dissertation is on that, it is on racial equity in the American South when it comes to schools. And I believe that there is definitely disproportionality in how we handle discipline. There's cultural disconnect in how we interact with students. So I think that has to be addressed, and it has to be addressed, you know, as someone from power, you have to show that you're not just paying lip service to it. You're not just saying it to win votes. You're saying it because that's something you believe deep down in your gut is a value of yours. And when people see that, I think there's a trickle-down effect. We don't like to admit it, but when you see we kind of adopt the values of our leadership. And when people see what I value, I think they see I value equity, and that trickles down. And so if that is a barrier in Natchitoches Parish, I think that's something that can be addressed. It can be addressed through a myriad of ways, whether it be cultural responsive pedagogy or professional development, where you address those microaggressions and things of that nature that aren't malicious, but are there, and they affect students, and they're a kind of a thing that progresses over a long period of time can have a huge impact on a student. And so we have to be honest, we have to have trust, and when we have those things, we can tackle any problem, even the most, the problem that makes us walk on eggshells the most. And I think, but I think that is the biggest issue. And I think that's an issue that doesn't just plague America or American schools, it plagues a lot of American institutions. So, thank you.
Any follow-up? That's fine.
We have a large African American student population here in Natchez Parish. How do you foresee enhancing meaningful administrative positions for qualified African Americans throughout our parish?
You have to, in any community, when there's communities within communities, you have to let that community know, and specifically here we're talking about the African American community, know that they are valued. And that's not done through me getting up here and saying, I value you. That's, the lowest form of letting someone know that. You have to show it through your actions. And unfortunately, I love to follow the school district news of different parishes in the state. Oftentimes our actions as superintendents, principals, et cetera, are contrary to our espoused values. We say we value equity. We say we value putting minority candidates in positions of authority. But what we see is that the data just isn't there to support that we're actually doing that. So I think what's most important is you get with your HBCUs in the state. We have some very strong ones that have very good departments in education, and you make those connections. You make MOUs with these folks, and you say, hey, we want to be a pipeline. And you also have Northwestern State University, which is an absolute gold mine of an institution to have next to a K-12 institution. And you say to the highest of the highs there, the presidents, et cetera, we want a pipeline of individuals. But then separate from that, there's no reason why we can't create a pipeline within the district. And that pipeline means you have leadership academies. And in this case, you branch out and you say, anyone who wants to be an aspiring leader. But if we're looking at our diversity and we're saying, I don't know, I'm just throwing a number up, 90% of our principals and assistant principals are of one background, and 70% of our students are of another background, that's something that needs to be addressed. And so I don't believe in setting quotas or anything like that, but I do believe in making it a priority. And the other thing that has to be realized, I'm a white man. I have a lot of privilege. I need to come to the table and I need to say, hey guys, I don't have all the answers. And I think there's a lot of times we don't do that because it's, who wants to admit that they don't have all the answers? But you come to the table and you say, I don't have all the answers. I need a female perspective. I need an African American perspective, because guess what? I can be the most woke person there is, and I'm not going to know everything there is to know. I mean, I'm writing my dissertation on the subject. I'm very interested in the subject, but there's a reason that my doctoral chair is an African American woman, because I went to her initially and I said, I need your help. I need guidance on this. And I think this same process needs that guidance. So you need stakeholders to weigh in. It just can't be the one guy at the top saying, oh yeah, we're going to do this. And then, within a year or two, you hire one person. Well, that's not true equity. The process needs equity. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any follow-up? Mr. Dan?
What is your experience with budgets, and what process would you use to prepare a budget?
Thank you for that question, Mr. Danzy. My budgets have been at Pineville High School. We were a large high school, but it was about $1 million that I think we came and went throughout the year. And then on a very small scale, when I was a soccer coach, I had about a $20,000 budget. But micro sometimes applies to the macro. And now currently, the special school programs have about a $10 million budget. And what I look at when it comes to budgets is, I very much believe, as I said before, that in the shared leadership model, there is a superintendent needs to be a jack of all trades, but doesn't necessarily have to be an expert on every single thing. There's a reason there's a CFO. There's a reason there's a maintenance man. Because if y'all are hired for that, you met the wrong guy, because it's not going to happen. So I believe in constant contact dialogue between the CFO and the superintendent, so that there's no question, because there's going to be two things dueling together. There's my vision as a superintendent, and there's the realities of the budget. And so there has to be this constant dialogue, because the CFO may not see the vision that I have. But at the same time, we also need to realize that the money coming in from the taxpayers is one set of money. We can have a department that's writing grants, that's getting money in a myriad of ways. We can, go to businesses. I know it's not a K-12 institution, but the community college in Alexandria just got $1 million from Royal Martin. Why did they get that? Because they saw results. And with us doing Jumpstart and things of that nature, there's no reason that companies wouldn't necessarily see a vision if it's strong enough. And so you have to be creative about your funding. But I also believe at the heart of all this is where's the money going? I know every school I've been at, every district I've been at, there's been programs that someone championed at some time, and then everyone stopped using it. And then $80,000 a year every year. So I don't believe in programs so much, and I don't mean cutting programs or adding programs. I just believe our most valuable thing in that budget isn't on the budget. It's our people. And one of the greatest things, although if you ask me this in my position, I deny it. One of the greatest things about special school district is we do have a tight budget. And I have had to make something out of nothing. We've done a whole heck of a lot with a very little. And I think just prioritizing where the money's going, is this necessary? Evaluating everything we do. And I think that starts at the top. When a lot of constituents see the superintendents making large salaries upon their initial entry into the profession, or into the position rather, there's a question of but is that helping students? And in some cases it is, if you have a strong superintendent who has a vision and everything. But I think that has to start at the top, and you have to look at every item and say, how is this helping instruction? Now, a CFO isn't going to necessarily see that. He's going to see dollars and cents, and that's why I think it's important to keep that dialogue open, and also keep a constant dialogue with the school board.
Let me follow up with one thing there. If you had a yearly deficit, what would be your review of that?
A yearly deficit, my initial first blush reaction is something isn't right there. Now, that's a very first blush reaction, because I don't know all the context of this hypothetical deficit, and I don't know the needs of everything. But bottom line is, the superintendent has a role of making hard decisions. And those hard decisions come because there's going to come a time where you're going to have to cut something that means probably a lot to maybe one of you in this room. But the way I could sleep well at night, cutting anything, and because that's always a dirty word, is this improving the situation of the individual student and the individual teacher in the classroom? Those are the two people who matter, and in that order, student then teacher. And so, when I look at a deficit, something's not working. I think we can fix it. But I also think it goes back to that question of, are we being the best stewards of the taxpayers' money? And are we being as creative as we can with our funding model? And I think if you look at those things, then you can answer most of those questions and figure it out. I think there's, I know some of the folks who work for NACDOS schools. I was on the NISL, National Institute for School Leaders, with them. There's some smart, talented people in this district. And there's no reason with that amount of talent in the room that something of that nature couldn't be solved. So if you're asking would I want to operate with a deficit yearly, no, sir. I don't think that's good business. My wife doesn't allow me to operate with a deficit at the house, so I don't think it's good to do at work.
Thank you.
Any follow-ups?
I'd just like to ask
Go ahead.
Have you looked at our budget?
I've looked at it very broadly. When I looked at all y'all's data, I told myself, I said, I'm gonna look at it because I want the knowledge. But at the same time, the black and white data can sometimes lead you down preconceived notions. So, very kind of first glance. So not in depth, I guess is what I should say.
Ms. Pierre?
How would you ensure that all new teachers complete cultural diversity training?
I love that you asked that question because that is the end result of my dissertation. My dissertation, and let me explain that real quick because I don't want anyone to get preconceived notions about what it is what I saw we read a lot in our doctoral class, a lot. And what I looked at was the demographics of America are shifting. We are becoming a nation of more students of color. And there's different projections that show different rates, but basically, the American classroom in the next 20 years will be more diverse than it's ever been. The teaching force, on the other hand, is staying primarily white and female, which is not bad, but there is, as we all know, and maybe you have to say in our private conversations or whatever, there's a disconnect there, a cultural disconnect at times. It's not saying that that African American teachers can't teach white students and vice versa, white teachers can teach African American students. But there are times where we need to help individuals bridge that cultural gap. And so my research is into the racial beliefs and attitudes of teachers. And so what the end result of that is to possibly provide professional development to teachers that bridges that gap so that they know that when a student is very quiet in the classroom, that's not them ignoring them, that's a respect thing from their culture. Or when they don't look them in the eyes, it's not a disrespect thing, that's how they've been taught in their culture. And so we get people to realize that there's not a right or wrong necessarily with how some of these things are treated. There's different, and different isn't bad. Different is good. I mean, we always espouse in America that we're a melting pot and we glorify that, but oftentimes in the classroom, we don't necessarily value it. So this is not something that I think teachers need to feel is being put upon them. It's something that will inevitably, based on data, based on research, empirical research by the folks like Tyrone Howard, who wrote the book, Why Race Matters in School, and he's the assistant chair of the education department at UCLA. And very intelligent folks. Race matters in schools. And is it going to change your ACT score from a 16 to a 36? Probably not. But it's not just about the gains in the classroom. It's also about showing every student in that classroom, no matter their creed, their color, their religion, that they are valued equally to every other student in that classroom. And I could spout off all the research I've done, but no matter what measure you look at right now in American schools, we cannot say that we are treating our students in the same way. We just can't. And so that's how I would deliver it to teachers. I would say, this is not a political statement. This is not about anything other than providing the best possible instruction for our students. And here's the data to support that. I think that answered your question, but I may have gone and chased a rabbit or two there.
I heard you, but the question was, how would you ensure that all new teachers complete the cultural diversity training? Because in this parish, we do have a larger population of African American minority students in basically the majority of the schools, and as you say, a lot of schools have white people.
I think the easiest way to do that is
not quite knowledgeable sometimes working with minority children.
There's definitely, and going back to the budget, there's people you can hire to come in and do that. But there's also, again, going back to NSU, there are folks at that university who, beyond a shadow of a doubt, whether in their sociology department or maybe there's, just different departments, psychology, et cetera, who are more than qualified to deliver something of that nature. And again, think that's something that doesn't necessarily have to come at a cost if you are being creative enough. The other way is, when you say ensure, I don't believe all the time in mandates, because mandates is the lowest form of management. But there are things that we do in every district currently that are mandates. Bullying training, sexual harassment training. So I am sure there's some vendor out there or some program out there that provides that teacher takes it and takes a little quiz. But the problem with that is that's a one-shot deal. This has to really start with your principals, and for that matter, your district staff, because my fear would be that you would say, hey, we're going to do this online, and it becomes kind of such that thing we have to do. So it needs to be something that's embedded and tracked, because if you're not tracking it, it doesn't matter, because no one's going to do it, or they're going to do it in a manner that's not effective. So, you have to get the folks at the top to buy into this. So you got to get your principals first, and then you roll it out to your teachers, and it needs to be something that is a constant refrain throughout the year and throughout every meeting. Because otherwise it's going to be that piece of paper that the teacher takes and throws away.
Thank you.
Any follow-up? If you were hired, what potential is there for you bringing in your own support staff?
Ooh, that's a tricky one.
We like that.
Yeah. Well, I think there's double-edged sword there. Through my time in Rapides Parish, through my time with special school district, I have met a lot of very talented individuals. If you were to ask me right now, is there someone that I want to bring in? The answer is no. Because I don't believe in necessarily saying like, hey, there's this great person, I'm gonna fit them in somewhere. Also, I've seen other districts where they bring in a superintendent and they automatically lose equity because they're an outsider anyways, and they bring in outsiders. And so then automatically everyone's on the defensive. At the same time, I also know, as I said before, that there's a lot of talented folks here in Natchitoches Parish. I've worked with them in Nissel, and they taught me as much as I taught them. So I would not rule it out to bring in someone else, other people, because if they're talented, they're talented. If they can help, they can help. But I think at this juncture, early on, there'd be no way to commit to it, because I may come in and look around and say, man, we're set. So I just don't believe in change for the sake of change, or change for my comfort's sake. And I think oftentimes that's what superintendents do. They bring someone in so they can have their people. I don't want to have my people. I want to be y'all's people. And so it all depends on the context in which it's done. But at this moment right now, I can answer that question no.
Thank you. Take any follow-up? Ms. Raven?
Mr. Eloi, what steps would you take to evaluate the current leadership positions within the central office? And please provide a time when you had to repurpose an employee to move to a more productive position.
First off, I think you have to have time. You have to have time to, and not in a formal capacity necessarily, but I very much believe in, a principal told me one time that he did management through wandering. And I was like, what do you mean wandering? And he said, I'd get my cup of coffee, I'd wander the hall. And he said, whenever I did that, I would find out stuff I never knew. And so I think, whether it's 3 months, 4 months, whatever, because you got to mess with that timeline, because at the same time you want to evaluate properly, you also don't want people to think you're just sitting there twiddling your thumbs. So, a timeline that's fair to all, and have a lot of conversations, but don't believe everything you hear. Don't believe everything people tell you, because, during a transition, a lot of times that's, people want to have an agenda. So just a lot of observation, a lot of conversations with people, a lot of conversations with stakeholders, and then you take all that data, because, we're taking notes, we're writing this down, we're looking at things. You may look at a school that has an F But does that mean that person, the teachers there are bad or the principal? Not at all. So you have to have the context with the data, you have all those things together, and then you're evaluating those, and you have your leadership staff, I believe wholeheartedly in having a core group that is honest, that can look at me and say, hey, that board meeting you just had, I'm not being disrespectful, but we gotta go a different direction. You know, where we have that culture within that boardroom where we can be honest to improve each other. So I'm looking at the data and I'm saying, you know, what is effective, what's not. Then I'm getting the context from the people, because I think that the qualitative is much stronger often than the quantitative data. And we're having that conversation consistently. But I don't think, you know, I'm going to come in and I'm going to have a leadership structure maybe I have in mind. But that doesn't need to necessarily also be concrete either, because I just thoroughly believe in not having those preconceived notions of, I believe you have the superintendent, assistant superintendent, directors, you know, and I'm trying to fit y'all into my mold. I think it's a two-way street. There's what y'all currently have, but then there's also what I have, and we kind of do a song and dance until it becomes what everyone is comfortable with and is most effective. As far as repurposing employees, special school district, as I said, we do a lot with a little, and I currently was given a position where a teacher moved out of the classroom, and I created, she is now my assistant regional. I've never had an assistant anything. I've never had a guidance department. I do it all. And so I pulled her out of the classroom because I was allowed to do that, and I've repurposed her as an administrative role. I've also had to move pairs and teachers from positions that they've been in for 10 plus years, because I thought the better fit for the students strategically was for them to be at another site. It's difficult conversations. I'm not afraid of those, but I also don't, you know, I don't go looking for them. When I recently had to take over the special ed center, everyone was scared when I came in there. They're like, oh, he's going to make all these changes. And I looked at, I observed and watched, and over the period of about a month and a half, I said, man, this is working really well. And so for the most part, I did a few little tweaks, but we kept rocking, because I believe you don't fix a wheel that's not broken. I just don't believe in that. So it's hard to explain the process, because I think it's a very organic process. I think it's something you kind of can't necessarily spell out. It's a feel, it's a gut thing, and you go and you start it, and you know when you started, and you know when you kind of got to your finish line.
Hey, Father, just a minute. We all understand that job satisfaction is key to retaining our employees long term. Aside from pay increase, how could you positively retain, positively impact job satisfaction?
I mentioned earlier that when I was at Pineville High School, you know, I was so excited they named me assistant principal. I'm like, you know, I'm going to go change the world. And then immediately we get that C letter grade. I think it was 2 weeks after they named me assistant principal. And then, you know, everything kind of was like, you know, just not happy anymore. And what we decided to do the rest of that year, because we had a morale problem, is we said we are going to focus on academics. Academics are still important. We're not going to ignore that. But as an administrative staff, we said the thing we are going to hit on this year is morale. And that meant we did all sorts of stuff that year. We had food truck Fridays. We brought in food trucks, and the teachers could go have a chalupa at lunch or whatever it was. And we did little things like that. We left notes and it was very strategic. It wasn't like, oh, one note and then 6 months later, nothing. It was consistent, trying to make the teachers in that building happy to be there. We did things that improved the aesthetics of the building, because as someone who works in an old state facility right now, I can tell you that aesthetics and what you're looking at on a daily basis in your office and room, it matters. So we did all those things. Everything we could control, we controlled. Because you're right. You know, we can say all the time, oh, we're gonna get raises, we're gonna do this. Sometimes that's out of control. 9 times out of 10, it's out of your control. But I thoroughly believe that once someone's gotten into the teaching profession, they know. I mean, they did 4 years of college, or they did an alternative program, or they've been in it for a while. They knew what they were getting into as far as money goes. I don't believe teachers leave any parish or any school based on money, unless you're offering them, $30,000 more or something crazy. What I do believe is people leave leadership. They leave leadership when they don't feel valued. And I can say with pride that over the past 3 years, at the most difficult schools in the state of Louisiana, we're talking about juvenile justice, psychiatric patients. We were laughing today at lunch about some incidents that occurred that aren't funny to anyone. Myself being attacked by students early on, things of that nature. No one's left those schools. We've had 100% retention, with the exception of 1 or 2 pairs who retired. But they were at 33 years, and I can't compete with retirement. But they stayed there because we created an atmosphere where, despite what was going on, everyone had each other's back. It wasn't the Christmas party where I got to make an excuse to get out of it. It was, we're going to have the Christmas party this year. And that matters. I invest in people because 100 years from now, I often have these existential things in my head before I go to sleep at night where, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? 100 years from now, people aren't going to remember what the SPS of Pinecrest was or any of that, or probably even what my dissertation was on. But 100 years from now, there might be a few people who remember that there was a real nice guy who did something for their grandpa or was kind to their father or mother when they were employed with Natchitoches Parish Schools. And that's what matters. The person who taught me that was my father. I watched him be a hotel manager for years. And hotel management doesn't have anything to do with education, but it can be a boring, tedious job. You have a lot of people not making a whole lot. Housekeepers and maintenance workers. But the people who still, he retired from that 20 years ago, the people who still come up to me in the community and say, "Are you Freddie Eloi's son?" I say, "Yeah." He was the best boss. I can't tell you how much money he made every year, but to me, that means so much. And so when you ask me the question, how do I retain people? I show them through action and words that I value them. And I get in on the ground floor. I believe, you're in schools, you're seeing, you're maybe even saying, "Hey, I'm the superintendent, but go grab yourself a Coke for 15 minutes. I'm gonna teach your class. I don't know a whole lot about algebra, but we'll figure it out." And when people see little things like that, they start to believe. And the belief becomes an avalanche, and avalanches are powerful. And that's when change happens.
Reverend Harris.
Right, Mr. Eloi, what will you do to increase dual enrollment in Jumpstart pathways?
Thank you for that question, Mr. Harris. Jumpstart, I was at Pineville High School, and we were on the ground floor of it. And one of the things, my issue with Jumpstart always was, there needs to be options. What kid at 18 years old is going to be like, "Oh yeah, I want to be a phlebotomist"? They may want to, but that's so specific. So I think first off, you have to look at the major industries in Natchitoches Parish. And I pulled up y'all's largest employers, and I'll give it to you real quick if you give me a chance. You have to co-op with them, and you have to say, okay, so do we need welders in this area? Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but you talk to those business leaders. So the largest ones, NSU, Alliance, Pilgrim Pride, the Parish Hospital, International Paper, and Walmart. And then I think y'all come up close to that. So you get with those folks and say, what are y'all's needs? Because it does me no good to do, I think there's one for diesel engine repair on tugboats. I don't think that, I may be wrong, but I don't think that applies to Natchitoches Parish. And so you get with these folks, and I think you also expand out. You say, hey, our kids can take a 45-minute drive to Alexandria. So Royal Martin, those folks, what are y'all doing? And then Same thing with Shreveport. You kind of cast a wide net and you say, what can we do? Well, then you have to make sure that you have these folks who are qualified to teach these jumpstart pathways. And I think you have to be creative with that because it's hard to get someone who is really good at being an auto mechanic to come teach at school for less money. And I don't know, some of these things can be addressed through budgetary. It's all based on what is our priority. And I think too often we prioritize college over the career. And again, that goes back to that equity. And why do we do that? Well, we could probably write a dissertation on that. But the thing is, we have to give that the same amount because if we look at our kids going to college, it's not the majority of the kids most often. It's the ones going to career. So we have to make it priority number one and put our money where our mouth is. And that doesn't mean you're neglecting the college pathway because that's still, I think for most of us, that's the pathway we want for our children because a lot of times it's the easier pathway in life. But that's where Jumpstart comes in and can make the other pathway easy as well. So I think, again, identifying what our needs are in this parish, because hopefully a lot of our kids are going to stay here and we're not going to send them to Texas or Rapides Parish or anywhere else. We don't want to lose those qualified workers. So we identify the needs, then we go out and we find the people or we train the people we already have. And I know of a parish down south, and it's one of the Saint somethings. But I know that when they had a need, they partnered with, I believe it was Southeastern. And they said, hey, will y'all come in and will y'all do classes for our teachers? Will you do it after hours? So that way they can just go straight from school into the cafeteria and they can take these classes, they can get certified. Because a lot of times teachers just don't have the time to get these extra certifications and things of that nature. And then we also have to look at to me, I'm not the president of NSU, but I think it's a home run to have a partnership with us where they say, hey, we're going to give you a huge cut on tuition, massive cut on tuition, because guess what? We're a major pipeline to your university, and to some degree, we just want you to do this as a goodwill, as part of the community. We're part of it. You're part of it. Let's make it better. So I think you really have to make those connections with the industry. As far as dual enrollment, man, I think kids should be graduating from Natchitoches Central High with associate's degrees. We do it at Pineville High School, and we're 45 minutes down the road. And you know why we do it there? Because Dr. Carl Carpenter was a friend of Northwestern and Natchitoches. He made those connections. So we have kids now at Pineville High School and other schools in parish, but Pineville was the first. We have kids who are leaving Pineville High School with an associate's that what they're doing next is they're getting their tops, 2 years to get a bachelor's, 2 more years they get a master's. They don't owe anything. So we've got to tap into this resource, and I know y'all already do, but in my mind, whatever we're doing with NSU, it's such a gold mine to me that as far as a partnership, that you have to just go to the table again and say, hey, whatever you can give, and whatever we can do in return, we'll help you with that too.
And we are jealous about that. Thank you.
Any follow-up?
All right. Considering that each school has unique needs, what do you feel is the best way to ensure that each school receives a curriculum that meets those needs while also maintaining consistency of curriculum from grade to grade and year to year? Additionally, how will you ensure that teachers will have all the supplies they will need to implement a curriculum prior to the start of a school year? And please include in your response your thoughts on the use and support of magnet and laboratory schools.
When it comes to curriculum, if you look at Doug Reeves' research, he did the 90-90-90 study. I don't know if y'all are familiar with that, but basically he looked at schools that were 90% minority, 90% socioeconomically low, but 90% achieving mastery or above. And he said a few things that they do, they all had some characteristics in common. One of which was they settle on a curriculum, they make sure it's a good curriculum, and by good in the state of Louisiana, we're really talking about tier 1. and they stick with it. I have seen so many parishes, it's become comical where, number one, their implementation initially is haphazard at best. I remember being at a school that we were getting the curriculum resources the day before the next unit would start. What time does the teacher have to look at and disaggregate that unit and plan and do all those things if they're having to wait 24 hours before they're going to teach the class? So I think you have to be very intentional about your timing. So we look at it and we say, okay, next school year, we're going to have this curriculum. What do we need to do today? We got to hurry up and get things done. Okay, so there's that. There's also the fact that with curriculum, I believe that autonomy is earned. So I know a lot of teachers and a lot of principals, they say, this isn't right for us. But can you show me the data? Can you show me the research that says that this isn't right for you? Because I believe that the teacher is the CEO of their classroom. But if you're a CEO that's perhaps not, the students in your class are performing 20% below mastery, maybe we need to have a more in-depth conversation about what curriculum is necessary for you. I think the curriculum, I truly believe, I've been to the trainings, I've seen it work with my students at Pinecrest. These are students who are cognitively, we're talking about 2.3 to 3 standard deviations below the mean. And I was the biggest one. I told the State Department, I said, we're going to teach Romeo and Juliet. And they said, yeah, you're going to do it with the lead connectors. And I saw a rigorous curriculum work with the lowest students that I've ever encountered. So when I look at a curriculum, I do appreciate the fact that schools are different and have different needs. I don't know if I agree with the idea, though, that schools are so different in this geographic area that we need to throw out 20 different curriculums. I think when you do that, it makes the logistics difficult on the providing the materials and the ensuring that the materials and support, because we're not just rolling out a curriculum, we're rolling out professional development. Because another thing parishes do is they roll out the curriculum and then next year we're going to give you the professional development. And it doesn't work that way. The teachers are frustrated, the parents are frustrated, the kids are frustrated. I also don't believe in quick rollouts of I can give you an example of Eureka Math, and I know everyone has an opinion on Eureka Math. Yeah, everyone does. Well, a lot of the problem, throw out the actual curriculum. A lot of the problem with implementation of Eureka was, we got to get these games down. We got to get these games down. And you gave it to K through 12, or K through 9, and the 7th and 8th graders and 9th graders, and even lower than that, didn't know what the heck was going on. They didn't have the vocabulary, the academic vocabulary. Instead, I believe you roll out to K1, 2, and then you go forward with that, and the next year you add 3rd grade, and you continue on doing that. I think the curriculum is extremely important, but almost equally important is the professional development we provide and the support we provide. And I think that's been the biggest failing of a lot of our curriculums, because a good teacher can, it's just like a good chef. I can give them pretty bad ingredients and they can make something beautiful out of it. Same thing with a teacher. I'm going to give you some good curriculum, but on my end, my responsibility is to make sure you have all those things that make that good curriculum the best it can be. So, I'm sure there's a situation where there's different curriculums. There's a gifted curriculum. We use ULS, which is Unique Learning System, for our most severe students, and and I've seen Springboard used for gifted, and Eureka use different bands. There's a place for that, but I really think you can do it with a more simplistic approach. Now, as far as magnets in lab schools, I think there's a place for those. But I looked at y'all's data and it says y'all are a C district. But when I disaggregated it, I really looked at it and said, man, this isn't a C district. This is really a D district with a few schools that are bumping them up. And there's constituencies there that you can't ignore. I want gifted students to have what they deserve. I want them to be pushed and have that, because, you know, I was a gifted student in school and I needed that. But at the same time, I got these kids over here who I need to move them. They're fifth graders and they're on a third grade level. I need to move them. So I'm 100% on board with the lab school. Plus, I think the lab school is also another avenue by which we make that relationship with NSU. And I think it's great for our teachers doing their methods and things of that nature. But I just don't want to ever, and I guess you could say this for everything, you don't support one thing to the extent that it undermines another program. So support the lab schools, support the magnet schools, but not at the detriment of every other program. Because, you know, I can, SPS wise, I can find you 100 different ways to work that math. And, you know, I can, at Pineville, one of the things we used to do is we'd increase our grad index by doing all these IBCs. And that's valuable stuff. Don't get me wrong, it's valuable stuff. But basically what we're doing in that is you almost are canceling out your dropouts. Instead of dealing with your dropouts, you're mathematically trying to make up for it. Instead, we should have been trying to prevent those dropouts. So there's a place for it. I just wouldn't want it to ever take away from students who do have needs. Does that answer it?
Any follow-up, I guess? Ms. Katrina?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My question is, our crime rate has increased dramatically, and I would like to know what will you be able to put in place to help our children to stay in school, to further their education so that they won't end up in the streets or as another statistic.
You know, you talked, the question earlier was about attracting a diverse teacher workforce, a diverse administration. I think that's important because students need to see examples of success from their community. But that's not going to do it all. I think the other problem with schools is that schools are often seen as the enemy. And that's because a lot of our discipline is punitive. And that's because, and I was one of those teachers, sometimes, you know, a kid would upset me and I wanted something done. Well, and I asked myself, no, did I want something done or did I want that behavior fixed? And that's what we need restorative discipline. Because if we're expelling pre-Kers and kindergartners, why are we surprised when in ninth grade they're dropping out? Because it's not that they're not valued there, and they're not seeing that education is going to do anything for them. What they're seeing is there's a lot of people here who don't understand me. They don't understand my background. They're yelling at me. They're not helping me. And I can make a heck of a lot more money and not get yelled at on the street. So I think that's a cultural issue within a district. It doesn't mean that overnight, by changing the culture of the district, you're going to fix the crime problem. You know, the whole lean on me scenario. I think if you probably looked at the data of that school, the movie made it for a much better story. But I do believe in that type of action. I believe that teachers are the most, we expect so much out of them. And they have such a varied job. They're a counselor, they're nurse, they're everything now, and that's getting even more so with we have an epidemic of mental health problems in this country. And it typically hits our students who are most already vulnerable. You know, they're socioeconomically vulnerable, they've experienced trauma, etc. We have to address that. We have to provide professional development for our teachers. And one of the things that special school district has provided me is I'm with these students that I can't expel, I can't suspend. We're the last stop for them. And it's made me be very creative. Because, you know, when I was at Pineville High School, the power of the pen, you know, suspension, expulsion. And I often think about that and I'm thinking to myself, what role did I play in that child's entire life? Was I the crossroads that led them down a darker path, or could I have done more? And we all want to do more and everything. But what Pinecrest and Special School District has taught me is when you don't have that tool, there was about 6 months where I hated life because I was like, give me that tool back. But then after I stopped feeling sorry for myself, I started realizing there's other ways. So, I have students who have traumatic brain injury and severe psychiatric problems that they can't control their emotions. And guess what? We have less incidents on our grounds than most schools do. And that's because I have teachers who truly care. I mean, care beyond caring. And they've created relationships with these students where these students know 100% that those teachers have their back. And I think every teacher I've ever met says that. How much are we doing it? How much are we trying to empathize with our students and realize where they're coming from? And I heard the neatest thing that the school was doing, because they had the same problems. They had students, they're in elementary, 5th, 6th, but it's that kind of age where kids are starting to not be so sweet, starting to separate, wanting to go do their thing in the streets and everything. And they had horrible discipline the year before, fights and ridiculous amounts of suspension and expulsion. And instead of just continuing to do the same thing, because guess what? Every school in the nation is continuing to do the same thing. And guess what? Same results are happening. And it's such a cliche, but it's that old cliche that, insanity's doing the same thing over and over. Schools are notorious for that. So this school said, hey, this isn't working. And what they did is they went out, and now instead of always suspending and expelling these kids in elementary, what they're doing is they're saying, okay, what is their behavior? This kid, he's just a little disrespectful, but everything has an antecedent. Instead, they're having group counseling time, where they say, let's talk about our feelings. And some of that's, a little hokey, but some of it's legitimate. We can't apply the 1950s and 60s mentality of discipline and treating students to 2020. Our population, our culture, everything has changed. And so we have to get creative. We have to go to research. And the least effective form of that is just kicking a kid out of school for 3 days. Now, sometimes you have to do it because it's for the greater good, or it's a safety issue, or so on. But we have to fix these kids early. Otherwise, we're going to be dealing with them for 12 years, and they're going to do the stuff that hurt kids do, and that's hurt other folks.
I know we're looking kind of short on time, but give us your ideas on how to create a community and district-wide culture of continuous improvement, and how you align your plans to achieve those goals.
I think you have to get your message out. Another thing about being in this day and age is social media. I don't know if y'all are familiar with Superintendent of Rapid East Parish. They had a bit of an image problem. He comes in and he says, we're not going to hire some fancy consulting firm or anything like that. He said, we have 54 schools. Guess what? We're going to have 54 social media consultants that get out to the community every good thing that we're doing. And so that's first. You gotta let people know that, hey, there's a lot of good stuff going on here. And when you do that, I just believe that even the most cantankerous, teacher who just doesn't want to do that, or parent or whoever, it's infectious, and they catch on to that. And when you start doing that, you build equity with people, and then you can start making some changes to whether it be curriculum or anything of that nature to get those gains on things. But I thoroughly believe, I'm a culture person. That's my thing. I believe that we can improve teaching, we can do all that, but if I don't fix the culture of a place, nothing's going to change. Or it's not going to be a sustainable change. It's going to change for a few years, and then it's going to go back to whatever it was. So I thoroughly believe that we can do the best practices, we can find the research, we can do all those things to affect positive growth academically, but unless we first get everyone on board with passion, with like energy, and just like, I get goosebumps thinking about that type of stuff. I'm like, let's get going. And that's what I did at Pineville. That's what I did at Pinecrest. It's like, it's fun to win. and in a school district, winning is growth. And it's even more fun because they don't just give you a trophy, you literally miraculously change someone's life. I mean, there's no other profession with the exception of maybe doctors and everything, you know, they literally save someone's life. But we're talking about, we can generationally change a community. We can change the community. And I believe in the power of a school district to do that. I think the most powerful entity within a municipality or a parish or whatever is the schools. Because there's a lot of people in this community. And not all of them went to NSU, and not all of them went to the same elementary, but a lot of them said, hey, I went to Natchitoches Central. And that's an identifying thing for them. And I think we build upon that, and we can really improve our schools with that spark. I could talk to you all night ad nauseum about programs and frameworks for change, and what our biggest bang for our buck could be for student improvement. But I think those are secondary to some degree to that cultural shift.
Mr. Grant, thank you very much. We're at that time now where we're closing remarks. If you would hold it to your 8 minutes allowed. We're running.
Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. We enjoy your passion. We have some folks behind you too.
Well, what I would leave y'all with is, number one, my passion. It's not trying to sell myself. This is what gets me going. This and LSU football. You know, hope there's not any Alabama fans on the board, but like these two things give me goosebumps. I mean, and it's how my clock ticks. I feel, you know, from the time I was a freshman in college and switched majors from business to education, I haven't looked back. My family's a bunch of educators, and all we do is talk education. All we do is talk about, you know, what we can do to improve. It's who I am. It's embedded in who I am, and I just love it. The second thing I would say is look at my track record. There's a lot of people who can say I'm superintendent or principal of a B school, an A school. Very few people can say they took a C school to an A school or took a failing special needs school that I wish I could take y'all there because it's just an interesting place, but took that from an F to a D, 98%. And I don't say that out of arrogance or false confidence. I say that because I just believe when you work hard, you invest in people, you inspire people with your passion, there's nowhere else to go but up. And I believe Natchitoches Parish Schools is poised for great things. I think y'all have some multitude of untapped potential. You have some things that districts would just kill for to have, whether it be NSU or also just having a small set of schools that you can really get in there and work with. And I just thoroughly believe that everything happens for a reason. And I believe that the superintendency, whether it be here or somewhere else, is the next step in my career, my path. And I think I could do a great job for y'all, and I think I could really work together with all of you to improve teaching and learning, but achievement and life outcomes for every student in this parish, no matter anything about them. And that's short and sweet.
Well, we appreciate your time and your answers. And, we will be meeting March 3rd and determining the finalists that will move forward in the process. You will receive a call on March 4th. That will allow you to know that you're moving forward in the process. Again, thank you for the time and coming today. We really appreciate it and enjoy meeting you.
And I thank you for having me. And would y'all like me to keep these questions up here right now?
No, yeah, just leave them there. There you go.
Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
Good luck.